ask questions. Yeah, no, they ask good questions. The rest of them,
I was very impressed.
just some points. Yeah, and I mean, he actually really fell down quite badly on the inability to answer the very specific questions that the French journalist asked him from Le Monde Diplomatique. So what does refrain from nuclear power actually mean, and what is the ton value of the loopholes or the actual policies that are built into CDM and other parts of protocol?
And he just says, I'm not going to talk about this stuff now.
I mean, what's interesting to me is that he said earlier that he had to go away and reflect on the comments he heard this morning so that he could write a text that he really believed in so he could defend it. And I think it's...
He didn't defend it at all. He just said
fairly worrying that
he
he obviously believes in what he's written as the ideal or a plausible solution without looking at these environmental and energy-related criteria.
Yeah, I actually liked that. I liked what he said this afternoon when he was going into the process, or this morning, whenever it was.
He's an intelligent bloke.
But he's pretty rude to the NGOs here. He says, I'm not... I don't...
No, but he knows who. I mean, his job is to. I mean, I think he's fairly arrogant. That's not necessarily a problem when you're in charge of a sort of tense process that's not been working so far this week, largely because of or maybe not largely, but the way it was set up hasn't enabled it to make particularly much progress.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we're in kind of 11th hour at the moment talking about.
That's how it was in Kyoto too, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. But I mean, I think the expectation. Well, there certainly wasn't an expectation on the NGO front that we'd spend the entire whole of the first day waiting for things to start. And the general lack of progress in the first week. I mean, that's not his fault.
I was hearing that nukes were going to be pulled out of the CDM, and now it sounds like they're kind of back in.
But I think the other important question in the press conference was about the weighting of whose proposals are actually on the table at the moment, and it's pretty clear that they are weighted in favour of the US, at least from my brief reading of his paper. I've not read it much, but I've not read it in incredible detail, and there's going to be the whole negotiation that goes on, but nevertheless it certainly seems that all the 3.4 stuff and the sinks in the CDM have gone in there, maybe not as the largest extent that they could have done, but still to an extent. And
so this gets us really close to the 60 to 80% reduction that the scientists are saying we're going to have to meet. I mean, it's a great step in the last 20 years.
Well, especially, I mean, what I've been really encouraged by in working inside in a sort of fairly soul-destroying, windowless, airless condition as this the last 2 weeks is that the web initiative that was taken by a range of NGOs, including the big ones and the small ones, produced 11 million signatures in 3 months through the web in support of action on climate change to specific governments. So it's not just a great bunch of people that know the science of climate change and have an intellectual worry about it. I mean, there's 11 million people in 3 months went to visit the website climatevoice.org and sent messages to governments saying we want action on climate change. And I don't think politicians can ignore that. And fortunately, we're in a situation where it's very complicated to decipher what's going on here in a way that's understandable for just about anybody outside the process. But there's some pretty important things that will get decided on at this meeting, albeit not very exciting sounding, square brackets.
Well, that's what we're trying to do with the TV show, actually, is to bridge that, kind of explain to people what's going on. Because you
can't do it in a soundbite. I mean, even one of our press people said to me today, so what's Article 3.4? And I said, what's about this? And they said, well, what's other activities? Well, they're about this. So you go through these endless explanations, and each one seems to take you further and further away from the issue at hand, which is why we need to take action quickly and why are you laughing at this terribly serious environmental issue?
Well, I'm still wondering about 3.4, it's keeping me up at night.
Yeah. Well, it should do. It should just fix a big loophole. No, but it is. I mean, you don't really need to know the contents of 3.4, but what strikes me is that anything the US pushes for on day one of the second week, when they could have had it on the table and been discussing it substantively the previous week, smacks to me, especially when it's such a big loophole, smacks to me of trying to strong-arm the process. And we all know what the US negotiators are like. They're very clever and they're very hard line, and they don't give anything away until they're forced to.
Well, I haven't seen the lobbyists from the oil and gas industry and from the car industry and the coal industry, and are they here or they've already got?
Well, I've not been following industry lobbyists closely.
Where do they hang out?
My perception or my guess is that people that are here now will be people that are interested in the detail of what's agreed under the CDM and what the opportunities are. So you're going to get more potential clean energy interests, and you're going to get more plantation type interests probably, and you're going to get general interest. But I think my perception of some of the industry groups in say Buenos Aires, just talking to people that turned up for the first time after Kyoto because they heard there was lots of business opportunities.
They turned up here?
They turned up in Buenos Aires in 1998. We're rather shocked at how governments do the business of negotiation. You know, I think business people are much more, you come in, you've got your bottom line sorted out and your strategy, and you agree things and you go home, whereas it's all this sort of...
Yeah, but that's usually one business to another. Here there's 160 or 180 countries that speak different languages.
No, I know, but I think that the point of saying all that is that businesses sort of like don't get a lot out of coming here. I mean, they do their work in a national context when they're trying to influence the positions that government take to this meeting. And I think actually that the NGOs work better at these meetings because we work collectively and strategically together, whereas industries tends to be fairly fragmented and protecting its own interests.
Well, we discovered the Global Climate Coalition today. There's 4 or 5 people in their office there. We walked in with the camera. They were like, whoa, get out of here. They don't even have Global Climate Coalition on their door. They've got GCC.
Yeah, so what did they have to say?
Well, we left the name and they haven't gotten back to us. The guy wasn't a spokesperson, so he couldn't really talk.
And he wouldn't?
He wouldn't, no.
He wouldn't say his own
No, and we
views.
did the same thing with the U.S. kind of brochures over here. We went up and asked them for the U.S. position on climate change, and people are saying that the U.S. is the spoiler here. What do you have to say? And they're like, well, we're not. We can't talk about the issue. We're not spokespeople. They didn't appreciate it either when I wrapped myself in the U.S. flag that they have over there and did a monologue from behind the flag.
From behind the flag.
Yeah.
I could wrap the whole conference centre in the flag at the moment, couldn't you?